London is constantly regenerating, expanding and encroaching. One day, as the old saying goes, it will be next door to all of us. In recent years we've lost hundreds of live music venues. The grand old Hammersmith Palais, for instance, is now a pure gym. And what about the football? Arsenal's famous Highbury Stadium is now a luxury housing complex. Highbury Square. Welcome to the future. As a schoolboy, I was obsessed with football. My life revolved around picking teams and 10-minute long penalty disputes. I never missed BBC's Football Focus on Saturday mornings or Match of the Day on Saturday nights. On Sunday afternoons, the whole world stopped for the big match with Brian Moore. My eldest brother Marlon's adolescence collided violently with the 1970s skinhead and bootboy uprising. He'd return home from Chelsea or Arsenal matches brimming with tales of terrace aggro. By the time the 1980s came around, I was eager to take a look for myself. The British football hooligan scene peaked during my adolescence. I witnessed my fair share of the bedlam, although never on the front line, unless by bad luck. If you caught even a partially obscured view of any trouble, you'd have more than enough to tell in school the following week. When Chelsea played West Ham at Stamford Bridge in September 1980, West Ham's intercity firm left a trail of fat lips and bloody noses from Pimlico to Fulham Broadway. Bad luck placed me on the front line 3 times that day. By the time plastic seats and high-vis stewards came in, I'd lost all interest. Over the years I grew out of football and into amateur boxing. Nowadays I'd have no idea who's top of the league or top scorer. It's one less thing in life to worry about. Although, hands up, I did get drawn into England's Euro 2020 campaign. I should have known better. During a casual conversation at work back in 2015, someone told me that West Ham United had sold the Boleyn Ground and would be relocating to Stratford. I didn't believe a word of it. Some things are sacred. I stood on both North and South Bank terraces at West Ham during the 1970s with my second oldest brother, Cam. We'd take a 51 bus from St Paul's Cray to Woolwich and then jump on the ferry across the Thames. Sometimes we'd walk through the foot tunnel underneath the river. That tunnel could be a gut-churning experience on match days, even for a West Ham fan. There'd usually be boot boys loitering down there, scouting for unfamiliarity. Of course, West Ham United did relocate to Stratford after 112 years in Upton Park. They played their last match at the Boleyn Ground on the evening of May the 10th, 2016 against Manchester United. Half-filled beer cans flew over Barking Road and Green Street. The Manchester team bus got caught in the middle. West Ham bowed out with a 3-2 win. Lifelong West Ham fanatic and terrace legend Bill Gardner was the last supporter to leave the Boleyn on that cruel night. Demolition began the following morning. In a world of commerce, nothing is sacred. Nowadays I travel east on the District line, east as the crows and pigeons fly, east onto holy ground, through the ancient walls of Aldgate and Whitechapel, into Stepney Green, formerly a hotbed of political dissent, rebel country. In 1911, bullets flew in nearby Sydney Street when 2 Latvian revolutionaries made a grim last stand against scores of police and army marksmen, and Winston Churchill. At Upton Park Station, signs that directed visiting supporters to the Boleyn Ground remained just about visible. At East Ham, relics from another world hide in plain sight. Out of the station, I turned left and headed down High Street North on a quest to retrace the footsteps of my childhood. The first clue, a signpost to a place that no longer exists. Down to the Barking Road, I turned right at the Denmark Arms, which never looks busy anymore. I've seen people sleeping rough in the doorways. On my way to see what has become of the bowling ground, I passed Ladysmith Avenue, where the Force's sweetheart, Dame Vera Lynn, lived in the 1920s and 30s, back when East Ham was an Essex borough. Dame Vera's songs bolstered British spirits as the trauma and hardship of World War II dragged on. When bombs rained down on London, she sang on tube station platforms for the communities sheltering there. Looking around now, it's difficult to imagine houses blown to rubble and entire families wiped out. Surnames once common around here disappeared overnight. I detoured in search of a blue plaque, and I found one, but it wasn't Dame Vera's. It's Charlie Painter's, who lived next door. In 1895, the Thames Iron Works and Shipbuilding Company in Canning Town formed its own football club. Thames Iron Works FC was founded by site foreman Dave Taylor and sports-loving businessman Arnold Hills. Both men shared a passion for football and believed that the local community deserved a club to be proud of. In 1897, they played home games at Memorial Grounds in West Ham. Local athlete Charlie Painter used the running track there. Initially, Charlie volunteered as club physio. He eventually signed a player's contract, but a knee injury scuppered his on-field ambitions. In 1904, the club changed its name to West Ham United and moved to the bowling ground, Upton Park. Charlie continued as club physio until 1911, when he was promoted by manager Sid King to first team trainer. It was Charlie Painter who, in the late 1920s, introduced the popular American waltz I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles to the club. He'd sing it in light-hearted praise of local schoolboy player Billy J. Murray, who resembled the boy in John Everett Millet's Bubbles painting. The club's house band added the song to their pre-match repertoire, and the rest is history. Sid King was sacked in 1932 after a blazing row with the board of directors. Charlie Painter took over the hot seat. He'd served his time and worked his way up through the ranks. The board's decision devastated Sid King. He committed suicide by drinking industrial chemicals. Here's to him. He lived and died for West Ham United. Charlie Painter managed the Hammers through thick and thin until 1950. He passed away in 1970. Here's to him, Mr. West Ham. Up past Thackeray Road, where Dame Vera was born, no blue plaque here either. Her childhood home was probably destroyed in the Blitz. East Ham took a pounding. I wonder why this street is named after the writer William Makepeace Thackeray. As far as I know, he was born in India and lived at addresses in Tunbridge Wells and Kensington. During the 1970s, Manchester United's Red Army of travelling supporters revolutionised British football fan culture. They invaded in thousands like Vikings wherever the team played. Being an avid Red, my brother Cam often went to their London matches. I'd gratefully tag along, hooked by the sheer tribal buzz. We were there when the Red Army almost half-filled Loftus Road, and when they completely commandeered Fulham's Craven Cottage.
Don't think they've paid to get in.
Back then, Manchester United were arguably the best supported team in the world. On Saturday, October 25th, 1975, the Red Army descended on Upton Park, where they encountered fierce resistance. 25 pence each brought me and my brother through the busy South Bank turnstiles. On entry, we heard thunderous chants of United, United. We assumed it to be business as usual for the all-conquering Red Army. But as we squeezed onto the packed terrace, we saw a Manchester United scarf on fire hanging from an overhead steel beam. The infamous Red Army had been well and truly outmanoeuvred. Half an hour before kick-off, all four sides of the ground heaved with East End pride. The Reds that had made it in were dotted about the South Bank like needles in a claret and blue haystack. Cam spotted a group of Reds down by the corner flag near the West Stand. I gripped his jacket for dear life as he somehow edged through the turbulence to be near them. We saw another Manchester mob over in the West Stand. They spent the entire game under siege. Wild kicks and punches went in from both sides throughout the game. I remember it as an exciting game, played out in a cold and spiteful atmosphere. West Ham did the business 2-1. During the match, a crowd control nightmare developed in the South Bank. Manchester fans had charged in through a broken gate to be greeted by West Ham's notorious Mile End mob. The ensuing violence and additional numbers caused a sudden crush down at the front of the stand. A massive police influx added to the problem.
In order to keep the peace, it means that people are being pushed forward.
The body-to-body compression down the front quickly became vice-like. We were wedged so tightly that I lifted both feet off the ground. The path of least resistance led onto the field of play. Hundreds of people climbed over the advertising boards. The referee eventually ordered both teams back to their changing rooms.
Peter Reeves, the referee, is calling the players off the field.
Moments later, a full-on pitch invasion alleviated the crisis. The police then had to find somewhere for the massive overspill to go. All the while, Cockney war cries rang out from the North Bank. At the time, I viewed it all as just another episode to relive at school the following week. Looking back now, I dread to think what would have happened if there'd been perimeter fences. I'd probably not have survived to tell this story. The Boleyn Ground once housed a tight-knit community within a tight-knit community. There's a new community in place now, financially secure and enclosed. A one-bedroom flat in Upton Gardens will cost you around £375,000. The new residents could never imagine the joy, pain and tribal passion that has played out in their living rooms. Looking at Painter House, I felt gutted. It's helpful to remember that London was once all shrublands, fields and marshes before commerce sailed in up the Thames. And then came us lot, rich and poor, police and thieves, and West Ham United. Change is all around us. What else to do but accept it? For me, Upton Gardens is where old school football was finally laid to rest. Painter House is a headstone. What's done is done, and we can't go back. The journey continues in Stratford.